Good morning, everyone. Thank you to each one of you for being here with us today. I'm Fernanda Mizin, brand manager at Azion, and I will be your host today. We know that insider threats represent a real problem for businesses, whether by accident or malicious intent. These threats can expose your company, your information, and your intellectual property, bringing risks to cyber attacks and the security of your data. But it's possible to protect yourself by acting proactively against these types of risks, relying on a strategic security and governance proposal. However, before we dive deeper into the topic, I would like to share with you some information. The event will be recorded, and later we will publish it on our YouTube and send to you by email. The event is divided in two parts. The first part, we are going to start in 3 minutes, and is a lecture by our speakers, Maurício Pegoraro and Paulo. And in the second part, we will have a question and answer session. Now, I would like to introduce today's speakers. Maurício Pegoraro is Chief Security Officer at Azion, with over 20 years of experience in key leadership roles in various areas of information security. Maurício leads Azion's information security vision, strategy, and programs. And Paulo, governance and compliance director at Cipher. He has more than 10 years of experience with technology and cybersecurity, certified as PCI, QSA, CISM. Thank you very much for joining us, Paulo and Maurício. And I think we can start already the event, right? We can start the presentation.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks, Paulo for being here with us and partnering on this presentation, and much appreciated. Thanks, Maurício and Fernanda for the organization, for the host here. So we're going to talk a little bit about the insider threat. First part, I'll just talk about the concepts and some intro on what's insider threat. Why you talk about that when we are talking about information security, right? And then Paul is going to bring how compliance can help to mitigate insider threat events and even avoid them. So just 2 seconds of myself. So I'm the CISO for Azion, and worked as security officer in a couple of banks from a larger company in US, and also have a couple of certifications, CSSP and CISO as well. Okay, let's go to the topics. Thanks. Next slide, please. So what's insider threat? What's the threat, actually, right? So insider threats is a general term, right, that refers to threats or to information security of an organization that may arise, that may come from internal agents. And these agents, these internal actors, they can act intentionally or non-intentionally, right? So in these actors, when you go to the literature, insider threat is always tied to the human factor, one way or another, right? So either because someone was tricked in doing something, or because someone was intentionally doing something bad, like installing a malware that's going to open a backdoor in your network, right? So an intentional event might be someone that, because of lack of training, clicked on a phishing link and installed a malware, and that malware enable other bad actors to start exfiltrating data from your organization, for example. And the intentional materialization of an insider threat is when you have like a rogue agent, a rogue employee or spy, whatever, inside your network, and that person starts compromising your environment intentionally. Okay, next one. Some stats just for right off the bat. Paulo is going to bring some much more color on this one when he starts talking about compliance. But just to give some initial lights, Ponemon Institute brings us that about 62% of all insider threats related instance, they are because of negligence and carelessness, right? 6% of insider threats, they are motivated by financial reasons. Someone's going to pay someone to do something, something bad on your network or in your application or exfiltrate some data. Instance-related insider threats grew 47% in 2020 and 2021. Of course, the pandemics enabled a lot of malware, a lot of security events to trigger. Cybercrime grew a lot, and with that, insider threat instance also grew a lot, right? So the pandemics like potentialize a lot of stuff, and insider threats is no exception to that. In 2021, 33% of all data breaches were related to insider threat events, either because a malware was installed unintentionally, or either because someone opened the doors of a database or something that grant access to external bad actors, right? Next up. Now, trying to typify a little bit more what would be those internal factors or these internal actors for that work out inside the threat events and inside the threat occurrences in a company, for example. We start with the careless workers, people that they don't exactly pay attention to training, they click on phishing links, and they don't care much what they install on their computers, right? And installing malware in client systems like a laptop, it's one of the main vectors to start an insider threat event. We have the negligent worker, the one that usually knows what has to be done but does not do, right? People that share the environment or an account or a password that they should use only by themselves. Usually a negligent worker that's involved on insider threats are employees that have some kind of privileged access in the environment, which is the same for the unhappy employees, that they are doing great, but by some event that's sometimes unrelated to information security, but it's something that makes that employee suddenly disgruntled, suddenly unhappy. So that's another type of actor that could start an insider threat event. And last but not least, the spy employees, people that are paid to be in your company to exfiltrate data, for example. And this is we've been seeing news and of course in movies, right? So a lot that how competitors fight each other and spy on each other. So insider threats can start on that as well. Next up. So how do you prevent insider threats? I'll talk about some baseline, some very generic items, and then we're going to dive into the compliance part. Next up. So as I said in the beginning, insider threats, they are always tied to the human factor, right? So, and we all know in information security, the human factor is the weakest link in all our information security chains, right? So, and that's especially true when you talk about insider threats. So one thing that we need to do, right? So we need to keep processes to create a good organizational climate, right? We keeping the company happy and keeping everyone feeling the value of what they deliver will drastically decrease at least the unintentional insider threats events, right? And with that, we need to monitor the employee satisfaction. We need to understand how our teams, how the works are doing, right? So we need to show that the company pays attention and hear them, right? And these two first items is directly related to how we create a friendly, good environment for the work, right? Next up, we need to prepare our teams through formal information security training programs. And we need to create awareness programs about internal information security processes. So those two bullets are related to education. We cannot as information security leaders, we cannot make someone accountable for something that they don't know, right? At least not in a daily basis, right? So, but that's why you need to educate them. We need to educate everyone about our policies, about the process that we create to protect the company against information security threats in general, including insider threats. And then the last part is something that's common and usual in corporations and information security. You need to reinforce everything that people was educated on, and we need to test that. So that's the part where we test, we do phishing simulation. That's the part where we do mandatory training, where people need to sign that they understand what they read and what they learned, right? So you see, this part here is a cycle. We create a good climate, we educate, and we measure that. So, and with all that, it's going to give us a vision of how our teams are doing, how they are prepared to face insider threat events, how they are prepared to face phishing and fight malware, right? Okay, next up. So then after or together, as we prepare our teams, right, we also need to have technical controls, things that are operational, things that gonna gives us the view of what's happening on the network, what's happening on the laptops and the servers and in all our environment, right? So we need, and I'll read here in not a specific order, just start from the bottom. So control administrative privilege access to servers and network equipment or to any other equipment. This is a control that we must have. Implement items like segregation of duties and need to know controls. We need to do that. We need to protect as much as we can all systems that can expose sensitive data if they are attacked. And this is our database, our web application servers, wherever our critical data is. We need to implement separation of tasks policies or segregation of duties or SOD. The term varies. So this needs to be enforced. And that is very tied to the controlling of the administrative and privileged access. We need to invest in good software development practices, and this is invest in this secure development lifecycle. Scan our code, fix our vulnerabilities, do pen testing once in a while, do all the time that you can, scan our environments and our software for security breaches. We need to implement security controls on the end user systems, on the laptops, and everything that the employee needs to use to do the work, right? So the daily work for the company. We need to implement security controls on that. And on top of all of that, we need to monitor the systems that are on the servers, the systems that are on the network, the systems that are on the endpoints. And on top of that, or wrapping all that, we need to have an information security governance program to glue and to put all this together, right? So information security governance is essential for everything here run smoothly and together, right? And even that here we are talking about insider threats. When we have a good information security governance, everything is going to tie up. And insider threats event is going to be one of the events that we are fixing. Probably it's the hardest one to fix sometimes because it's so tied to the human factor. But without all this here, without the governance, we won't even get closer to identify that an insider threat is happening. So now I'll turn to Paulo, and he's going to talk with us about how compliance and how this ties to information security governance and how this can help everyone on the insider threat events. Thanks. With you, Paulo. Thanks.
Thanks, Pegoraro. Firstly, I want to thank everyone to be here with us today. It's a little forum, but it's a forum with quality. So it's very nice to talk with you guys. So as Pegoraro said, the insider threats are caused mainly by people who in some step are caused by people, okay, in some level, and some of them may or may not be intentionally, and that's where compliance and governance can help. Okay, so Next slide, please. So first of all, let's introduce you guys to the theme. What is compliance? Okay, compliance is the ability to act in accordance with a set of rules or set of requirements, rather than to be internal within a company. You have the boarding director team that requires you to follow some set of rules, or external. Okay, maybe you have health data internally, and you have to follow HIPAA. You have your company stocks within the market, so the New York market stocks. So you have to follow SOX. You deal with the payment card data, so you have to follow the CISO. So we have a lot regarding compliance, and how compliance can help companies to deal with insider threat as well. Okay, next slide, please. So the main motivators are, of course, the international requirements that are required by companies, agency, institutes, the local laws, for instance. So we have IATA, PCI DSS, HIPAA. We have customers that are requiring that too. So this is something like a competitive edge. We have a lot of laws and regulations, okay, that do apply to companies that not just locally, not just local laws and regulations, but if we're going to deal with personal data from people that are inside the European Union, we have to follow the GDPR rules. And if we eventually deal with financial data, there are a lot of agencies that regulate the financial and banking systems as well. But we also have a way to standardize the activities and processes within a company. And when we talk about compliance, we usually think about a set of rules and requirements, as I've just stated, and have them documented as well. But this is in the major companies that we perform assessments here at Cipher, we see that the documentation, the formalization of the process, and the standardization of the processes are overlooked almost always. So people may know what is security and what they can do, what they cannot do, but it is not a consensus to everyone on how to perform their work, to perform their jobs the day by day, and implement information security as a business as usual activity. Okay, increase corporate maturity and governance, which is really important for the company to grow a strategy regarding information security. Prevents leak of data and information, and fraud prevention, of course. So these are the main motivators. Next slide, please. So I want to show you what is the impact of the insider threats in security events. Starting by one data here is that by 2024, it is estimated for cybercrime to the business losses with cybercrime to exceed $5 trillion, okay, in the next 3 years. And 88% of data breaches are caused or are facilitated in some way by human error, okay? So it's a huge lot of money that are lost because we have, of course, the impact of people on these data breaches, but we also have to see which are intentional and which are not, which are unintentional. So we work with people in our companies, and we know that they are. We imagine we suppose that they are good-hearted people, that they are going to help us, that they are not with a behavior of conducting some kind of issue or loss to the company. However, many of the losses, many of the issues are caused by accidents. Okay, so it's very important for us to have a strategy of compliance and governance internally in order for we to deal with them. Okay, and I'm going to share with you some more data for you to know. So next slide, please. So this is an excerpt from the Verizon 2021 DBIR, okay, where in the top 4 patterns of data breaches, we have social engineering and miscellaneous errors, always on the top 4. And I brought to you here some of the biggest cases that are in accommodation and food services, education, public administration as well, retail. So always the social engineering and errors are on the top 4. Okay, next slide, please. And to do a breach drill down here, we have these main causes and the methods. Okay, so social and error are always, again, in the top 4 here, in the top 3. Okay, and the phishing is the main method of gaining access to credentials and to in some way collecting data or information that is required for a bigger attack. Okay, next, please. So what about North America? This is not different here. Okay, so social engineering is on the top of the cases where we have breaches here. So it is not different from what we have on a worldwide regarding events and the threat actors. Okay, so what we can see here is that, okay, we have a lot of breaches that are caused by or are in some way leveraged by people that suffer from social engineering. And let's say that someone receives an email and clicks on a link on an email, and the link permits or allow for a malware to be installed, for instance, and this malware could be something that can exfiltrate data or can perform a ransom of the data. Okay, like a ransom attack. So this is very important for we to know the patterns and how we can proceed on creating information security strategies in order to deal with these breaches, and how we can avoid them, or how can we have strategies in place to mitigate those risks. Okay, next slide, please. So how compliance can help to combat insider threats. Okay, first, knowing how to identify and track risks. This is very important. Okay, and you need to understand if the risks are coming from outside or inside the organization. Okay, or both. Knowing how to apply controls that make sense for the company and mitigates the main risks. Okay, Paul, when you say make sense, why did you say that? Because we may have a lot of security risks, okay, but not all of them are going to be a factor for you to implement or efforts and resources on combating them. Or so not everyone has a lot of money and time to invest in information security. So we have to pick our battles. We have to understand what the risks are, what are the biggest of them, and how do we proceed to mitigate them specifically. Okay, the company needs to establish clear guidelines of what can be done and what cannot be done. Okay, so following the same thought, we cannot defeat an elephant with a stone. We could not also kill a mosquito with a cannonball. So we have to pick our battles and to know what are the biggest risks and what we are going to do. And we need to assess our companies as well, because we need to understand what we already have in order to leverage our maturity regarding information security. Decrease the occurrence of accidents and errors. Okay. Standardizing activities so we can do them in an optimal way, losing less time to do them, and also avoiding causing these errors and accidents. Gaining visibility of problems and be able to monitor them. So it's really important to monitor what are the issues and the risks within a company, because maybe some issues or some risks that we may have are not that big, but as times go by, we may have that problem becomes bigger and bigger. So we have to create the ability to monitor them and to see if they are still inoffensive, so if they are not a harm to the company yet. So we have to create a process to monitor them, to ensure that they are kept controlled. Okay. And also develop a culture of information security, which is not easy. Okay, we know that. This is something that we create with time, with effort, with talking to people and making them understand what are the risks that they are bringing to the company and what is important for them to know and for them to share with us in order for we, as security officers, to help them. Okay, next slide, please. So, is there a recipe for success? Some of you may be asking. So, is there something we can do? And actually, there is. Okay, there's a lot of security standards and best practice that we can use to help us on this strategy, on this compliance and governance strategy. Okay, next slide. So what should I do, Paulo? What could help us here? Okay, so this is the recipe that I'm going to share with you in 8 steps. First step is get to know your business and your process. This is very important. Okay, we are dealing with information security, but information security cannot exist if we don't have the business. So we have to understand the business. Understand the business process. We can perform a critical review of the business process in order to offer the company and the management strategies on how they can perform the same business, but in a way that is more secure. Okay, and it is important for you to document that. Next. Map all the applicable risks, including those of your partners, and this is very important. Okay, if you guys have a strategy of I have some activities that are performed within a company, but we have service providers that perform other kinds of services for us. You are also responsible for those risks that these partners, the service providers, could have regarding dealing with the data of you. So, for instance, if you are PCI DSS certified, or are you aiming for that, and you have service providers that help you with the strategy or in something regarding on how to achieve compliance, you need to require for them to be compliant as well, and you need to evaluate them as well. So, mapping those risks and mapping the risks that are applicable to your partners, and see how your partners can help you on the strategy of dealing with those risks and mitigating those risks is very important. Okay, and it's important to document this as well. Okay, next please. Define risk remediation actions. so we perform the assessment, identify the risks. So we need to define what we can do, what we already have, and what we haven't, and what we are going to do in a short term, medium to long term as well. So what we are going to do and document, and of course, next slide. Plan the budget and resources to fix the problems that you find, and document them as well. Just to remember, not everyone have a lot of money, so we don't have infinite money nor infinite time, so we need to pick our battles and what are the risks that we are going to mitigate. Next, please. Share tasks and responsibilities and document them. And the responsibilities, some of the responsibilities are going to be with end users, okay? So it's very important to have them and to create this information security culture within the company, okay? Because they are the weaker point on our chain, on our security chain. So it's very important for them to know how to do their work in an optimal and secure way. Next. Establish indicator and monitor results frequently. This is because we could not see an issue or a risk and think that they remain the same forever. This is not the case, especially in information security and IT. Okay, so what is good now maybe not be good or not close to be good in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. So it's very important for us to monitor it, okay, and document it. Next. Train and educate your personnel. Okay, this is very important. This is something that you need to do frequently. You have to choose the wording that you're going to use with different kind of people. So this is very important as well for people to understand what is security. So not everyone are going to be the same knowledge regarding information security. So this is a strategy very important to create. And the last step is next. Go back to step 1. So this is a process that is infinite. Okay, so it's like to have a car. You have a car. You walk with your car. You bought your car, but you still have to fill it with gas. You still have to clean it. You still have to change the oil, etc. So you have to not only to implement this process, but you have to guarantee that this process are kept and everyone knows. And we know that the IT and security personnel rotates a lot. There's a lot of offers. And we have to create strategies in order to guarantee that every new person that comes to the company understand what are their responsibilities as well. Okay, so next step. So it's a continuous improvement, okay? To know your company, to map the risks, define actions to mitigate the risks, to plan the resources, assign responsibilities to those that are responsible for keeping compliance or security, or apply what the actions you define them to do, establish indicators and educate your personnel. These over time are going to grow your information security company with your information security culture within a company. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much, Paulo and Maurício. It was great. It was really valuable. I hope everyone here enjoyed it as much as I did. And now we have some time for the Q&A session. We already received some questions from our audience. So let me see here. The first one is for Paulo. And the question is, what key performance indicators and metrics could be used to evaluate exposure to insider threats, data loss, and debt?
Perfect. An amazing question. Amazing question. What we usually do, we create some kind of first, we analyze the amount of incidents that we have within a company, This may lead us to two kinds of evaluations. Firstly, if we have a lot of incidents, not necessarily we do not have, we are weaker regarding security. So, for instance, you say to a person, oh, you need to follow these rules, and if you see someone not following these rules this way, you need to open an incident with your IT and information security teams for them to evaluate and to have those people. And if you do not offer at the company some kind of training and knowledge regarding what they need to do, what is okay to do and what is not okay to do, we may not have security incidents for any of them. So I don't know what is right, I don't know what is wrong, I don't know if I reach information security. So have more incidents that are open by the personnel of the company is one indicator that may identify if people are understanding the rules and requiring for others to follow those rules as well. Another one that is good is when you perform some kind of information security awareness, is a good practice to share with them, to share with the person of the company, and not only the IT guys, not only the information security guys, but also with the HR, with the financial accountability, etc., with a survey in order for them to fulfill their survey and for we to understand if the knowledge that we try to share with them was enough for them to understand some basic concepts regarding information security. So these are two good ways to monitor what the people knowledgeable regarding information security and how they can help to in some way to leverage the information security culture within a company. Okay.
Yeah, it's like you said before, it's a constant work, right? And also a work in partnership between the security department with internal communications. Like we see that a lot in Azion, Maurício, with our internal communications, always communicating all the employees. And we see how much this is important. And I have one more question here. This one is for Maurício. And is how to access an organization's insider risk in light of recent or upcoming changes to the workforce, such as generational considerations with Gen Z entering the workforce, hybrid work, and voluntary and involuntary turnover.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. That's a lot of things to unpack here. So let me try to get each point. So just to reinforce one thing that and linking what with Paulo's answer, right? So sharing information and sharing what are the expectations about security inside the company is key, right? So that's how we maintain a compliance program, a security program running. Without people knowing what they need to do, they won't do. Or if they try to do something, probably they're going to fail or do something that's not appropriate, right? So, and sharing information and communicating is also the key part for to tackle all these three main items that you just asked, Fernanda. For example, the new generations coming in, the young people coming and working, they come from an environment or from a reality where information is everywhere, right? When I started in information in IT, internet was just starting, right? So we didn't have all this amount of information flowing today. So one thing that's common when you talk to what young people, they want to know, they need to know, and they like information. And that's awesome. So what you need to do when it comes to security is you need to adapt to that. You need to find ways to handle and protect this high amount of information flowing, right? At the same time that we put on defenses on around our compliance and security programs and establish the rules that need to be followed, right? And these rules, they need to be monitored, they need to follow, and they need to advance as the generations advance. To the workforce change, right? So to the now, which is a reality after the pandemics, right? So everyone is remote, right? Companies coming fully to the office, maybe we won't see that anymore, right? There's definitely going to be a hybrid situation for most of the cases. And when you think about that, when you think about insider threat, with that in that scenario is basically we are opening our attack surface to anywhere someone is working, either in their houses, in their homes, in a cyber cafe, in some restaurant, in the airport, right? So that's one of the things that we mentioned, right? So we need to secure the endpoint. We need to secure where and from where we know that the individual is working, and we know that the individual is working is from the assets that we gave to them to work, right? So the laptop, the mobile phone. So we need to enforce security in that, and we need to find ways to secure this mobility part. And that's today is totally possible using VPNs, using EDR scanners in the laptops, antivirus, and all that stuff that you already know, right? And monitoring what's happening on those assets. And the last part, I'm trying to remember what was the voluntary and involuntary turnover, right? So it's and that part is where we tie back with the good climate of the company, right? So I think and now talking about insider threat, we want to avoid that people feel bad when they are now working with us, right? So we want to keep the good climate, we want to keep the good ethical environment, right? So, and if you do that, even when we have attrition, when we have people leaving, people still going to respect the rules that they were used to, right? So, so with that, we avoid that part of the when workforce shifts, right, and they go somewhere else or do some work, right? So we need to, in the end, in all these aspects, one thing that's important, and I like to think, is we need to value the individuals working with us. We need to educate them, and we need to hold them accountable when necessary, right? So, but that is only possible when we care and we promote an ethical and good environment in the companies, right? I think, to me personally, this is probably the most important control, if you can say like that, that you should have. I just keep the environment sane, the environment healthy in our companies. And with that, we're going to have, not that we won't have security issues, not that we won't have insider threats, but at least we are going to be valuing the human factor the way that needs to be valued. And anything that happens after that is something that we can deal with some other ways, right? So we need to put the human as central, the employee as central, understand what they're doing, how they're doing, and how they're feeling, right? So, and once we get this, we get a hold on this, when we have this working, then we can create the technical controls, the compliance controls that we're going to complement and protect the company and the individuals on that working on the company.
Perfect, because we want the people to see us security officers as their partners,
correct,
not as adversaries, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so we have one more here for Paulo and one more for you, okay, Maurício, and then we end the event. So Paulo, during a risk assessment, how do we evaluate the likelihood and impact of data theft across the organization?
Okay, so this is the 1 million question. Just kidding. But we have in the literature that we have for how assessing, identifying, mapping, and managing risks, we have some kind of ways to define how are the impact, what are the size of the impact, and the probability of we have a risk for becoming a reality. Okay, so based on that, we define what are the odds of a risk to become real, and if they become real, what are the impacts in our organization? Usually, we use monetary values that are discussed within a company to understand what is an impact that is small, what is an impact that is considered big, and also using the same kind of perspective, we try to understand what are the impacts of for you to stop something, so to promote a kind of interruption in some of the business process that you have, and also what are the impacts of the company image and reputation. So we basically define what are the criteria for define which probability is low, low, medium, or high, and the same we do for the impact, what is considered is low, medium, or high, and we basically create a formula that we can fulfill a matrix that provide us with enough information to define what are the biggest risks and what are the risks that not impose a bigger threat to us. We usually use the ISO 37000 family, or specifically 27005. So this is a lot of recommendations. And how do we define this criteria? That is not the same for every company, but we use the same material in order to create something that is tailor-made to the company in order for them to evaluate what are the risks. Okay.
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 Very good. Maurício, do you want to add
Oh,
something?
good. Oh, that's right on.
Okay, so the last question is for Maurício. What is the highest cost to an organization related to insider threats? And what are the steps to investigate and mitigate insider threat attacks? Okay,
2 parts then. Okay, that's a very, very good question. So let me start with the first part. So the insider threat, as any other attack or something that goes in the end, insider threat is never alone, right? Something else is going to happen, right? Insider threat is when we find something happening and hopefully you can stop it before something bad happens, like a data exfiltration. But an insider threat event will never happen alone, as a phishing event never happens alone, right? So the main problem, or the highest cost, is brand and reputation for the company, right? When insider threats and the upcoming and the other events that come after that, like data exfiltration or anything that, when those see the light of the day and are on the news, that's the worst case scenario, right? So that's where the brand of the company, the brand and the reputation of the company are affected or start being affected. So that's why we need to do all that that you spoke already about, the programs and the education that we have with our teams. We need to have our compliance program running, and we need to protect. In the end of the day, we're going to for company-wise, we are protecting our brand, our reputation, we are protecting our customer data, our customer information, and we are protecting the trust our customers have on us. And we are also protecting our employees, right? All parts are equally important, the company, the customers, and the employees, right? In the end of the day, when data breaches happen, for example, everyone is affected in all levels, right? What's the second part again? Can you repeat, please?
Yes. So, oh, I was here. What are the steps to investigate and mitigate these threats, these attacks, actually?
Okay, so usually an insider threat investigation starts when we find something, right? So someone that shouldn't have an access in some place, they start happening, and we start investigating that. Another way is when we see data moving in ways that they should not be moving. That's how we start the investigations. And the next step is isolate whatever the problem is, identify the problem, identify what vectors, what was the triggers, and what are the possible solutions. And once we know all the scenario, we start containing whatever is happening, right? And hopefully we can catch whatever is happening before larger damage is done, and we fix that. But all this that I said, it's only possible if you are monitoring the environment, if you understand our people, if you have controls around the human factors and the technical factors to know that things are out of normal, right? So, and once we understand the problem, we know how to mitigate, we know how to contain it, we're gonna end the problem, we're gonna resolve. If a data leakage is happening, for example, we're gonna stop the data leakage. We're gonna review our controls, we're gonna review, for example, the access controls around the data, and basically we're gonna fix that breach and enhance the controls around that, right? And of course, deal with all collateral damage that happened because of the data breach. If our reputation started being tainted, we're gonna work with that. If our customers and employees, they start not having trust on us, we need to fix that as well. So, but those are items much difficult to fix than the technical ones, but still, yet they need to be fixed if they come to happen. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, and I thought it really interesting what you said about brand reputation, because it takes so many times and effort to build the brand reputation, and then an insider threat can ruin everything or take a long time to rebuild all the reputation, right?
Yeah, it's like a castle of cards. It's hard for you to build it, but to destroy it, it's in just a brink.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, so now we are out of time. Thank you so much for your participation, Maurício and Paulo. It was amazing. And I also would like to thank to our participation attendees in your presence, as well as the time and knowledge that Paulo and Maurício brought to us today. Don't forget to follow us on social media. The links are here on our chat and also on the screen. And also read our blog. We have a lot of useful content that you can read and know more about edge computing, cybersecurity, security, and much more. We look forward to seeing you at the next events.